Because Pilgrim's Progress is a Christian allegory, it is significant on two levels. The plot first follows a guy by the name of Christian as he leaves the city of destruction and travels to a location known as the Celestial City, coming across a variety of obstacles and terrifying creatures along the route. On a deeper level, however, Pilgrim's Progress depicts the journey of a typical Christian as they make an effort to put their destructive, sinful ways behind them and enter into heaven. The narrative of Christian's voyage is essentially a dream being experienced by the book's unidentified narrator. In the narrator's dream, Christian is struggling with the weight of his sins on his back and is unsure of how to get rid of it. He's also struggling with the knowledge that his hometown, the city of destruction, will soon be destroyed by a fire. However, when he tells his wife and children about it, they assume he is crazy and ridicule and reject him. Actually, the nameless narrator of the novel is having a dream that is the account of Christian's voyage. In the dream, Christian is struggling under a huge burden, the weight of his sins, and is unsure of how to get rid of it. He's also having trouble dealing with the fact that a fire is about to completely destroy his hometown, the city of destruction. But when he informs his wife and kids, they assume he's crazy, laugh at him, and reject him. However, Christian unintentionally falls into the Slough of Despond, a muddy swamp, before he can get to the wicket gate. Fortunately, a man named Help rescues him and explains that sinners' uncertainties and anxieties gather in this bog. Christian encounters a man named Worldly Wiseman on the way to the gate, who warns him against following the advice of the evangelist since it will only get him into trouble. Christian should travel to the town of morality and seek the assistance of a man named Legality to have his load lifted, rather than worrying about what the Bible, the book Christian is carrying, says. Christian starts to follow this advice, but he feels as though his load will never let up as it just gets heavier. Thankfully, the evangelist locates him once more and informs him that he was misled. Legality cannot atone for Christian's sins and would only keep him in a tighter tie. Finally reaching the wicket gate, Christian joyfully knocks and introduces himself as a humble sinner. He is greeted warmly by a man by the name of Goodwill, who leads Christian along the straight and narrow route to the location of deliverance, which leads to the Celestial City, or heaven. When Christian arrives at the interpreter's home along this roadway, the interpreter walks him through a sequence of symbols that represent a Christian believer's journey through life. Then, as Goodwill had promised, Christian runs to the cross, where he quickly loses his burden, which slides off his back and vanishes into a tomb. He is greeted by three angels known as the Shining Ones. When Christian enters the celestial gate, he must turn in the roll or certificate that one of them hands him. Christian keeps going with joy. Christian quickly finds his way to a place called the Palace Beautiful, where he finds rest and inspiration and is sent on his way with a sword, after briefly misplacing his roll and having to pass roaring lions. Now that Christian has entered the Valley of Humiliation, he is met by the horrifying demon Apollyon. Apollyon tries to discourage Christian by reminding him of his previous transgressions, but Christian responds that Christ has forgiven him, which enrages Apollyon. Apollyon gets wounded by Christian's sword after a protracted, ferocious battle. Then he enters the Valley of the Shadow of Death, a place that is completely dark and has a doorway to hell. When he hears Faithful, a fellow traveler, praying in the distance, he is encouraged in his voyage. He meets up with Faithful the following morning and learns about his new friend's quest. The old village of Vanity, which hosts a sizable fair offering every possible sort of goods, including wicked ones, is soon reached by Christian and Faithful. When the pilgrims attract attention by refusing to participate in the fair's attractions, the inhabitants of Vanity attack them, and Faithful is brutally put to death. Christian manages to flee, and he is accompanied by a man by the name of Hopeful, who saw faithful die and made the decision to go in search of the celestial city himself. When Christian and hopeful become lost, they end themselves on the property of a giant called Despair. He locks them up in the filthy dungeon under Doubting Castle. Christian becomes unhappy after being hungry and tortured repeatedly, but hopeful cheers him up by pointing out their victories. Christian finds a key that lets him and hopeful escape the dungeon after turning to prayer. Christian and hopeful eventually come at the enchanted ground after taking a little detour off the route. Christian inquiries about hopeful's conversion in an effort to keep them both alert because the enchanted ground's air may send people into a dangerous slumber. They also attempt to encourage a guy by the name of Ignorance, who thinks he will go to heaven due to his efforts and good deeds. Then Christian and hopeful travel to Beulah, a tranquil country that surrounds the celestial city. They must use the force of their faith to cross the river of death in order to get to the city. Hopeful needs to keep his pal Christian's head above water because he finds the crossing to be horrifying. Christian finds the crossing to be simple if he starts to focus on Jesus rather than his own sins. When the pilgrims turn in their certificates, the celestial city, which glitters with gold and echoes with song, erupts in jubilant greeting. The journey of Christiana, Christian's wife, is the subject of the book's second section. Christiana had previously made fun of and rejected her husband's quest, but his passing compels her to change her mind. She collects her 4 boys and sobs in sorrow for her cruelty to their father after receiving an invitation from Christ himself. The gang embarks on their own pilgrimage with their neighbor Mercy. At the wicket gate, everyone is greeted with warmth. Following training at the interpreter's house, they continue their trip with a protector by the name of Great Heart. Christiana begs Great Heart to elaborate on the Christian notion of salvation when they get to the cross. A month is spent in the porter's lodge at Palace Beautiful by Christiana, Mercy, and the boys. Mercy turns down a worldly suitor there who doesn't appreciate her obsession with helping the poor. Additionally, Christiana's son Matthew becomes ill after eating some stolen fruit on the road and needs to drink a purgative potion mixed with tears of regret. With the approval of their hosts, the company departs with Great Heart serving as their guide. They easily navigate the Valley of Humiliation, and Great Heart kills a giant for them in the Valley of the Shadow of Death. Then Honest, an old pilgrim, joins their group. A friendly guy named Gaius owns an inn where Christiana's company stays for a time. The squad also picks up pilgrims with the names Feeble-Mind and Ready to Halt after taking down another giant. When they get in Vanity, they find that, unlike where Christian and Faithful were, pilgrims are no longer severely persecuted. The pilgrims travel to Doubting Castle after spending a lot of time with a decent guy named Nason. Here, the members of the company rescue pilgrims named Despondency and Much Afraid before killing the giants and completely destroying the castle. Along the rest of the journey, the gang is joined by Valiant for Truth, who is avoiding thieves, and Stand Fast, who is escaping a witch's seduction. Christiana's party arrives in Beulah and settles on the fringes of the celestial city. The group has grown in number since the boys and Mercy are now all married. Christian soon invites Christiana to heaven. She crosses the river, leaving each traveler with words of encouragement, and is happily carried by angels to the celestial gate. With the exception of the families of her sons, each member of her party is called by Christ one by one and crosses the river to join the celebration and rest in the celestial city. The church prospers as a result of Christian and Christiana's children staying behind.